Alright, part 2. But I think I'll add some insanity to the crazy. Yes, there's some insanity to add to the crazy that I'm responding to. So that's a fun combination always. Maybe I'll submit that as a potato chip flavor. Insanely crazy. So anyway, right up to here, he's basically saying, well, you know, you can't figure out anything about this feeling thing. You can't tell whether you're having the worst life possible and whether you're having the best life possible. You have no clue whatsoever. It's like sloshing around in a sea of complete uncertainty. You have no capacity to reference anything or know anything. All those people who were fighting slavery because they thought slavery was horrible never were slaves, so how they know it's horrible? What'd they use, like imagination or something? Oh, wait a minute. Hey! We could use our imagination. Imagine what it would be like. And then we could have an opinion that's pretty well informed. Huh. Wow. That's really amazing. No, it's not really, right? Yeah. We've been able to do that a long time. So anyway, that's the part we're up to.
Completely at sea in this manner. I don't have any way of judging my own suffering, at least as compared to that of someone else.
I mean, I really just have to make a glancing blow at that argument, right? I don't have to really tear it down and do all that stuff, right? I can just glance at it and go, whoa. That is a stinker. Right? I don't have to explain, do I? I don't really have to. You can use your imagination, can't you? You can imagine how, well, you get it, right?
To judge someone else's suffering, someone else's experience of the negative state is not something that we are equipped to do, because...
Yes, so when you see somebody's leg go backwards and the knee goes crackety-crack and they scream, I mean, you can't really tell it's not great stuff. I mean, it might be like one of those itchy scabs where you're just kind of like, ooh, it's a kind of a fun pleasure.
We would have to then put ourselves on the receiving end of someone else's experiences, including the inner interpretation that they put on such experiences.
Right. Do we really need to do that? We're humans. We can sort of figure out that the human comes in a certain kind of configuration. We can figure out that gorillas are gorillas and wildebeest are wildebeest. And yeah, I wouldn't fuck a wildebeest vagina, but apparently wildebeest will. So I think all the wildebeest kind of figure out that wildebeest vagina is cool, and I don't figure that out because I'm a human. So I can make distinctions between other mammals and me, even though we have 90% of the same genetic code. We don't necessarily have 90% of common interests. But whatever. I mean, we can really come somewhere close to the target, right? I mean, you don't have to hit the bullseye on this, okay? You don't have to feel their pain exactly. You just have to put it in some kind of packet that's somewhere around the little blue section in the middle.
Experiences, which may very well be 99.9% projection. Or
our accurate projection, our accurate interpretation, our accurate approximation, our accurate understanding, our accurate compassion, our accurate sympathy, our accurate... come on. This is the foundation of his glibness on the subject of suffering, is that we haven't have a clue. We don't know... the horror.
Interpretation. As I mentioned in the comments section of a previous video, Room 101, which is the ultimate torture chamber, the worst thing in the world, could be some horrific atrocity visited upon somebody in terms of the usual physical tortures or mental anguish experiments involving cruelty to yourself or having to watch someone you love.
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody really. I don't think in the whole history of recorded mankind, I don't think there's anybody who you want to thought it was a good time to have a screwdriver hammered through their head. I really don't.
Have atrocity visited upon them. Could be those. To other people,
I mean, you know, maybe even the belly button thing might be a common thing, right? Like nobody would want somebody to be tickling their belly button for very long. Ooh. Ooh. That's a nasty one, huh?
Room 101 might simply be sitting in an empty room with nothing to do.
Yeah, right. That probably scares 0.0000000000 times, minus 33. 10 to the minus 33 zeros kind of percent of the human race who are horrified at the empty room scenario. I don't know. This is... I can't waste too much time on this, so let's just get it done.
That might be unendurable for that person. I know a few people like that.
Yes, you do. Of course you do.
So...
Of course you do.
What's in room 101? It's the worst thing in the world. What might that be? Interesting question, isn't it?
Really? Do you think this is an interesting question? Do you think the room 101 for 99.99999 of people is going to be a room that you're not going to understand as being not pleasant?
Is there an answer to it?
Oh, yes, there is.
One answer.
Oh, you crazy fucks.
If only reality were that.
Oh, we're having a fun conversation about torture. I'm not a sadistic lunatic. You only think so. I'm only pretending to be one on YouTube. Oh, God.
Convenient.
Oh, no. Back to this guy.
Following from premise 1 will tend to act in accordance with said drive. Premise 5, ought implies can. Conclusion 3, it can...
Whatever. Ought implies can. This is challenging, like somehow ought implies can. Does it really? I mean, can, being able, or ability. Maybe she said ought implies ability. I don't even know whether it really does. I mean, there's a way you could phrase the circumstance and say, you ought not have performed surgery, if you don't know how to perform surgery. So it sort of implies that I already know you can't, and I'm just acknowledging, as you should acknowledge, that you shouldn't do surgery when you don't know how to do it.
cannot be unethical for the human species to propagate itself, as from conclusion 2 and premise 5 it's an inevitability.
So this is the way to do ethical equations in video format. Is what you just did here, this slip slop. I'm going to read something really quickly, and you'll have no idea what I'm saying, and then you'll just agree with me, right? Yes, you just agree with me. If you're on my side, right? If you're on my side, you'll agree with me. Yeah, right? You won't understand what I said, but you'll agree with me. Ah, yes, it seems the common method of persuasion on planet Earth is to confuse and just get the people to nod their head. Death tax is bad. Yeah. Okay, that's how it works. Yeah. Well, I won't do it, but yeah, I mean, I could do a lot of those, right? Yeah. Blank people are dirty. No, I could do lots of stuff like that, huh?
Now, I know that that's a question of whether or not it is moral or immoral for the human species to propagate itself. But I think that's what matters, because morality is the question of how should I act. Now,
morality is the question of how should I act, and you act based on a plan, and the plan is based on having an economy of function and purpose. If we can agree on that, then we're probably going to be okay.
When you ask this question of value, I asked you before, what makes you think that this kind of instrumental reasoning is sufficient or interesting or the right toolkit to use to investigate this problem?
Well, I guess what I'm saying is when you study the nature of the universe and all of its stuff that we can glean from it, it's this physical phenomenon, and it creates sentient organisms. That seems a significant, distinct element. The other elements appear not to have any welfare interest, while the sentient beings do seem to have a welfare interest that involves a capacity to be significantly harmed in terms of feeling horrible. And feeling horrible is by definition horrible, which is a term of negation, negative functionality. That seems reasonable to say that's the source of the value.
Because it doesn't seem to matter to me all that much.
Gee, I don't care what really matters to you, to tell you the truth. Yeah, I really don't.
Whether or not kids are valuable, right? Whether or not human life or life as such is valuable. It seems to me that you're...
Is sentience valuable? That's the thing I'm arguing, that feelings are valuable. That all feelings have value.
Standard of value is arbitrary as well.
It's arbitrary to make a distinction between non-sentient and sentient. That's arbitrary. It's meaningless. Making a distinction between concentration camp and Starbucks is completely arbitrary. Oh, sorry. Mini stroke. Yeah. It's a problem, living on Earth with these idiots that every now and then have one of these little mini strokes. They say things just so preposterous. Shocking. Shocking!
As all standards of value are.
There you go. It's all arbitrary. So that's what you glean from all your German Nazi fucking scumbag chauvinistic fuckwits philosophers, is that value doesn't exist and the only thing that matters is what makes their dicks hard. Everything else doesn't matter. If they're not having a good time, none of us are having a good time. They are gods, and by extension, if you open their magic book, you become a god, and now you can tell everything else it has no value except for you. Oh, man. That's really a cool scheme. Shit, I should have... It's like the first pyramid scheme. Brilliant.
They are intersubjectively arrived at. That's what value is.
Says you. The counter-argument is that is douchebag nonsense. That is like baby drivel. It's so fucking easy to say that doesn't make any sense. We know sentient beingness is important. We know it. You know it. You do know it. I mean, there's absolutely no way you're going to tell me that you can't figure that out. that if there is a rocket ship in space and one rocket ship has a sentient creature in it and one rocket ship doesn't have a sentient creature in it, that it does matter which one crashes, or any scenario I make up where there's a consequence, you're going to be aware of the fact that it would be better if the sentient is not harmed. You really are going to be able to tell the difference. You really are. Especially if I give the little sentient a name, like Jiminy. If I give him a name and give him a little, how about if I give him a little hat? Well, then you'll be able to tell that he's a sentient and he has a welfare that matters. God, you people can't be this fucking stupid.
So the fact of the matter is that the human species, again, intersubjectively, deems that it is of value to continue to propagate our species.
Oh, whatever. So the human species, the majority says so. So that's what he just said, right? Let's not mix words. Let's cut to the, what do you call it? Let's cut out the crap. No, let's cut out the crap. Get to the point he just said, which was, we the majority say so. Oh, fuck. God, I just couldn't possibly find you more intellectually unchallenging. Oh, just mock it. Mock. It's a mockery. You, sir, are a mockery.
So therefore it has value.
An argument that defends the right of people to play God with somebody else's welfare when they have no God powers.
This is such a strange question. I mean, do you...
No, I don't think it's that strange. We understand that only so far in the all of human understanding, okay, there was only one way to create, and that was through godness. So, yeah. And so then we, as a concession to God's superpowers, certain concessions were made that people would jump into volcanoes because God said so. Because God had these powers. Now, if God doesn't have any powers, then people wouldn't jump into volcanoes for it. That kind of thing.
I think that the justification for God being able to bring things... I'm an atheist, I'm not a Christian, but do you think that within any religious framework, the reason why God has the right to create is because he has superpowers? Or powers, as you put it? I mean, that's...
Yes, that's the very nature of creation, is the ability to control the creation. That's right, when you create something, you're exercising power. Creation, logically, takes more superpowers than management. Like, it's harder to build a car than it is to drive a car. Get it?
That's not what it is. If I had quote-unquote God powers, whatever the fuck that is, heat vision, maybe. If I had God powers, I don't think that would necessarily give me the right to quote-unquote play God.
Well, I think it would, quote-unquote, if you had God powers, because you would have the ability to fix your mistakes. Like, obviously God had limited God powers, the Christian God, because he had to use floods and all kinds of crazy things, to fix problems. He couldn't just fix them. He had to always fix them in some kind of... He always had the wrong tool for the job. I mean, God's toolkit did seem to be kind of weird and fucked up. He seemed to just have a bunch of hammers, and that was like all he had was hammers. So, yeah, his toolkit sucked. But look, the point of the metaphor is that you're taking authority. When you take authority, you should have power. You should have ability. It's like driving the car again. When you're going to go 70 miles on the highway, you should be sure that you're able to do this without putting somebody at risk. You should be certain, even. Shouldn't you?
But see, this is where you're moving into an area of equivocation. You're starting to talk about rights. Well, what are rights? Rights are a definition of human autonomy.
No. Rights are what's left over when you've satisfied all your responsibilities. You see? So if you're going to exercise a right to procreate, you have to fulfill all the responsibilities first, which are that you have to have a reason that's legitimate, you have to have the power to manage it, you have to control the future of it, you have to make sure things don't happen and go all kinds of haywire and melt down and a bunch of radiation shoot around, and that's the kind of thing. Come on, you can understand that. Try a little bit harder.
Are they not? I have the right to do X, Y, and Z. If you tell me I can't do those things, that is to infringe on my autonomy. What is that?
No, it is to recognize you have responsibilities first. Responsibilities first, rights are the refuse. That's the way it works. Satisfy your responsibilities, and everything left over is rights. So your responsibility when imposing on something else is to be certain of the outcome. Pretty much.
Autonomy. Autonomy is a moral value. So when you're talking about rights, you're talking about a moral question. But
well, again, I'm not talking about moral questions. So again, you just won't let that word go. I'm talking about a value equation. I'm talking about the fact that if you're going to fuck with something, you have to make sure your recipe will work and not cause harm. Unnecessary, uncompensated for harm. That your influence will be productive, not destructive. That's the responsibility.
Just talked about how you're not talking about a moral question. I don't see how I don't see how you're not contradicting yourself.
Right, because you don't understand that harm is the negative, and it must be avoided unless you have some anticipation that it'll create some greater relief of harm, some greater defense of harm. Like you use me as a shield to block the hordes that are coming to harm something. You know, the rape monsters are coming, and you use me as a shield, or you throw me at them or something, or you catapult me over to them. And it seems a minor price to pay because, you might wipe out the rape monsters and then prevent all the horrible rapes. That kind of thing.
Thought it was just about value in an economic exchange sense. Turns out it's...
If you think about it, you'll realize it's exactly what I'm saying. It's a value equation. That's right. Every action has an effect. And the idea is try to narrow and limit, because we can't know for sure. So we try to go with probabilities, and we try to narrow and limit the scope of catastrophe, the risk of meltdown, in some economical way. Like you don't spend preposterous amounts of money to try to be completely fail-safe, but you try to get as close as you can, as economically as you can. And some of the questions will get very, very complex, because we don't have perfect knowledge, but some of the questions are not complex, because they involve making a nuclear power plant that doesn't produce any electricity. And so you say, well, guess what? We can go all the way with that one and put it right the hell back on the drawing board and say, let's not even start that one up. Let's not even put stick one on the ground for that one, because that one has no hope of producing anything but trouble.
It's about autonomy, rights, morals.
I don't know. Newt. My name is Newt. They come at night mostly. I love that character. Okay, so then he's gonna start telling us what our argument is.
Wait, telling quote unquote us what our argument is?
Yes, anti-natalist argument. Yes, that's the category I'd put myself in for the purpose of the statement.
Are you not in that category? Because I do remember saying, I will not be addressing any of Inmendham's arguments.
It doesn't matter. You were addressing the subject of antinatalism. I am the most visually recognized antinatalist on the YouTubes. So I guess I sort of have a stake in the video you made. Whether my particular arguments are going to be responded to or not is irrelevant. You are dissing the subject for which I have some sort of significant correlation to. So yes, my response is totally reasonable. So he paraphrases us by saying,
Nope, not paraphrasing you. Again.
Paraphrasing antinatalists. I mean, obviously the us stands for antinatalists. The us doesn't stand for blonde-haired pretty boys with wonderful blue eyes. That's not the category I was describing, correct? When I was saying us, that's not what I was talking about. I was talking about antinatalists. Gee, you are just too fucking full of shit. The argument from human suffering. Well, first off, it's not the argument I've made. My argument would be the argument from suffering, period.
Interesting. So you're trying to bring animals into this. Maybe moral, maybe not. I'm going to say it's moral, but then use...
I'm trying to bring animals into it? No, I started from the very beginning. The whole point of me becoming an antinatalist, I would argue, is because I thought of the animals first. It's always been about the animals. Humans have always sucked. The animals are the only thing worth a damn. We deserve to suffer. Humans deserve the torment they will impose on each other. Animals do not. Humans could have been somebody, and they decide instead to be skanky crack whores, intellectually as well.
Moral categories and moral reasoning and moral language to talk about the thing. But if you say I'm talking about morality, you're going to get it, brother.
Whatever. I mean, I couldn't make that any clearer. Yes, you're going to tell us what our argument is. So now you're going to paraphrase our argument as the argument from human suffering. Well, that's not the complete argument is all I'm saying. I'm saying the argument for suffering, you want to call it that, is fine. I didn't say you couldn't do that. I just said, well, I do make this distinction that it's really about suffering, period. And I think many antinatalists understand it is about suffering, period. Not human suffering.
Whatever this thing is, right? To talk about it.
I mean, many antinatalists are vegetarians. I mean, let's not be stupid here and recognize that there isn't some sort of sympathy that spreads beyond human genome.
Animals. The fact of the matter is that I don't think we ascribe moral judgments to animals' actions.
Who's saying we do? It's not about saying animals are bad for procreating. It's about whether we're going to do anything about it. Yes, animals are not intelligent. They don't get to drive the bus. We're the intelligent ones. We're going to drive the bus. That's the way it works. True enough.
So if an animal, rabbits propagate their own species, is that not moral? I guess it's...
No, it's not value rich, okay? It is not value productive. It is not in the best interest of the rabbits. Just as it is not in the best interest of whales to have baby whales, because a human's going to come along and stick a harpoon in them. You can't understand that? It wouldn't be very smart for a slave to deliberately have babies, right? And make them slaves. Get it? But they don't know no better, or they can't help no better. So it's not about blaming people who aren't making conscious decisions. It's about blaming people who are and have the capacity to do something to fix this shithole and do nothing but glibly sit on their skanky, fat, flabby asses and talk glib bullshit. You suck.
not even just not moral, it's without value. I don't know what the fuck you're saying anymore.
Oh, whatever. So you couldn't figure out that if there was a syphilis microbe and it infected things, it was just a parasite, it wouldn't make sense to eradicate it because it doesn't do anything productive. It just makes things suffer. Couldn't figure that out. Oh, okay. Okay, it's over your pay grade. Yeah, okay. But more rationally, the argument is too much suffering. The argument from it's too expensive. So let's just say suffering is another word for expense.
That seems arbitrary.
It seems arbitrary. Now, I'm going to have to walk and talk. I'm going to have to think, and I don't know what I'm going to do. How the fuck can tying suffering to bad, to negative, to expenditure, to blight, to negative, to bad, to expenditure, to cost, to taxation, to every negative fucking word we could ever invent? How is connecting suffering to that somehow arbitrary? It seems perfectly the most anti-arbitrary thing a goddamn person could do is connect the word suffering to the word nasty. Bad. Wasteful. Expensive. Negative. Every negative style word suffering should be associated with. But he thinks it's arbitrary. It's an arbitrary classification. Classifying suffering as a negative state is an arbitrary classification. I mean, this really is pathetic, right? Because this is, I would be better served. I'd get a more intelligent response from an actual 6-year-old. An actual 6-year-old, I think, could understand that suffering be bad. I mean, what happens to people? They open that little crazy book of Nietzsche and all of a sudden, boom, 75 IQ points right down the toilet.
Suffering is expense. Suffering is something that you pay. Something that you pay to who? Something that you buy and sell in the market?
No, exactly. It's by its very nature a negative. So it is why, when the market goes down, why is it bad? Because value is destroyed. Suffering is value destroyed. It's negative, yes. So every metaphor you come up with, suffering would be lying at the meaning of it. Why is it bad that the stock market goes down? Oh, that's right, because people can't live comfortably anymore. They have to live uncomfortably. They have to suffer for it. Yeah, that's why everything that's called bad, like a Holocaust, why is the Holocaust bad? Because people suffer. And the relatives suffer. And the loved ones suffer. People suffer. That's why something is bad. The world wars were bad because people suffered. Yes, suffering is the root of all value. Yes, it's true. It's a fact. There's no value outside of the effect on a sentient. Show me one thing in the universe that has value independent of affecting a sentient's welfare. Show it to me.
Has some value, not just some value, but some fixed value?
Yes, it is the value. It is the creation of the actual currency of life. The actual currency of the universe is actually made out of the welfare of sentient beings.
I mean, this seems to not go hand in hand with the idea of expense. There's nothing about suffering that...
It doesn't go hand in hand with the idea of tax, penalty, price. You can't understand it as a price paid to have, like, happy sunset with Jimmy. I have to pay the price of anal wart. That's the way life works. Yes.
It seems to lend itself to that analogy. It seems just as arbitrary as saying, well, let's say suffering is potato.
Okay, so it's as arbitrary connecting suffering with a negative thing that has to be endured as a price for whatever positives you're going to have or get for it, is as arbitrary as calling suffering potato. Man. Yeah, sorry. Me and the palm were as one. There's no hope. The hope is gone. They're too stupid, Gary. They're just too stupid. They're too fucking stupid. The worst horror consumes almost an infinite amount of your grand pleasures. I can think of one person dying of radiation sickness after we dropped the nukes in Japan, and I can say, what have I accomplished, or you, or any of these fucktards around me? How many of these fucktarded, stupid existences, Batman existences, are worth that horrible death?
Ooh, that's a great question. So let's do the math. How do you measure suffering? According to what units? How do you measure pleasure? Are they on the same scale? Are they convertible into one another?
Well, whatever. I've done lots of videos on this subject, actually. I don't think they are convertible into one another. I don't think there is such a thing as pleasure. Pleasure is merely the absence of a negative, gnawing desire or need or lack of fulfillment. We're born into the world broken, and we just keep trying to fix the broken. So it's all a negative game, and you only think you're climbing somewhere because you're getting closer to the surface, and the surface is zero. So yes, it's all whip. There is no carrot. The carrot is the absence of the whip. The whip stops hitting you a little bit, or it's a little weaker, and so you think that's a good time. Okay, so yes, the whole thing is just so bad. It's just so hideous. It's even more hideous than people think. But regardless, it doesn't really matter. My point is, as I stated it pretty clearly, I can imagine no function that you could enjoy that would be compensating for someone enduring radiation, death, sickness after their wife and kids have been evaporated. So, or the building's fallen on them, crushed them. Yeah, I can imagine no anything you'll ever do in your life, or anything 100 of us or 1,000 of us will accomplish in terms of our pleasure and gratification that could in any way undo, compensate for, balance on the scales, the absolute horror of what that person endured and experienced. That's my argument. Yes, that's what I believe. You don't have to believe that, but I believe that's the facts of our reality, and that's why I am obnoxious to our reality.
How do you do that measurement? Because I have no idea. I mean, it sounds...
Well, you have no idea. I mean, you can't have some idea. You can't at all figure out that you, like for a new iPod, you wouldn't have your nuts cut off. You can't make any of these extreme comparisons and make any concessions at all to the fact that you can understand that there's certain torments and horrors and punishments you would never endure. You would not live like that. There's nothing you can point to on this planet that you would say, I'd rather not do that. Oh, fuck.
It's reasonable, right? But at the same time, how is this not arbitrary nonsense that you've just assigned out of nowhere. Like, where is your justification for that?
What do I have to justify? The fact that every day people suffer horrible fates based on nothing they did to deserve it or to consent to it every fucking day, and that's a price we pay for our glib, experiential, oh, I'm so fucking creative and brilliant bullshit. You just can't make these simple comparisons and say this is the price. The price for living in California is you have to deal with earthquakes, and if you live in Oklahoma, you have to deal with tornadoes, and this is the expense, this is the price you pay. Now, is there, in your opinion, some possible price that's too high? I'm arguing the price is too high. I mean, really, you can't imagine a price too high? There's no such thing as a price too high? There isn't. I can't increase the number of Jews in the concentration camp, and there's no number for which you find it unacceptable. No number is too many. None. It's not possible. There's no point where you'll say the human experiment fails. There's no disaster I could illustrate for you where you say no mas. You have no standard whatsoever. You have no comprehension of a standard whatsoever.
Waiting.
Imposed in that horrible way. First you watch your wife and kids die, and then you slowly die vomiting to death.
Appeal to emotion?
No, appeal to reality. Okay, every now and then you have to make an argument that's a little bit real. Okay, just a little bit. I mean, I haven't spent my 4,000 videos showing, I could just put graphic pictures behind every one of my videos of animals being tortured every fucking day. Every fucking day in some laboratory they're sewing an ear on a rat. They're doing some kind of disgusting, horrible thing. It's all over the fucking place. They got shit shoved up their asses. They got shit shoved in their brains. They're fucking with them every fucking day. And every fucking day I could show you that. And that would be fair. But to save you the indignity of me having to rub the shit that overtly in your fucking face, I do try to make a rational argument. And once in a while I'll say the word vomit, or I'll say the word, I'll describe something just horrifically unpleasant. Once in a fucking while I'll do that. And then you're going to call that an appeal to emotion. Man, you guys are such goddamn loser, pussy, weasel, bullshit assholes. I mean, you just can't have it fall on you any... There's no such thing as getting your just fucking desserts for this absolute bullshit. You're going to whine that it's an appeal to emotion to barely describe the periphery of the horror of dying of radiation sickness.
Anyone? Anyone?
I can't think of anything you are ever going to do that's going to be worth that. Can you? You want to tell me?
Sure. Again, give me some standard by which we can agree upon how to evaluate this question, even possibly how to communicate information to one another other than I feel, which like 2 minutes ago you were so derisive about. I mean, and you're presenting this as an argument.
Yeah, I'm presenting as an argument that the obvious, we know the periphery. We know that cupcake isn't worth cancer. We know that if there was a choice, the government's going to make a wonderful chocolate chip cupcake. And the price for it will be, we will give cancer to a 6-year-old kid. Now, everybody can goddamn say, that's not a good deal. Let's not go for it. All right, let's stick with the box over there, box number 3, and let's not go for that fucking curtain. No, let's not make that deal. Everybody can figure it out. And that's what I'm saying, and that's what I said in the fucking video you're responding to, is that we know the goddamn extremes. But for brains.
Provide me with some kind of metric, and we can begin to talk about
No, you have to provide me with some kind of metric. Like, is there something other than some silly emotional sense of joy? The joy of a retard getting a balloon, or the joy of an asshole getting a gold medal, or the joy of some fucker curing cancer. They're all joys. They're just sensations felt by sentient beings. One of them isn't better than some other one. The sensation itself is the only thing there really is. And it's just a delusion that it makes a difference which one, based on consequential import in terms of what it means to more people or what it means in the long run and all that kind of stuff. But the actual experience is no different. Qualitatively. It's another one of these tragedies of life, okay? Is that the good feelings you get being a complete motherfucking cunt asshole are just as fun as the good feelings you get being a decent, help the old lady across the streeter. That those two people, the good guy and the bad guy, okay, they both get rewarded the same way. And it's just one of those little tricks of life that absolutely suck.
The calculus of pleasures and pains. I don't think it exists, though, and if it doesn't, you got nothing.
Well, whatever. I think it does exist. I think we do know that cupcake is not worth kid with cancer. So I win the argument because I got everything and you have nothing. Yay. Yeah, I'd like you to deal with the argument from silly addiction. Okay, so that would be one if you're taking suggestions. Explain how everything you do isn't just some sort of addictive psychology, and it really doesn't matter what makes you happy.
Didn't say that it mattered what made me happy.
No, but from my point of view, it does matter. See, that's the catch. Because it's about the cupcake and the cancer.
It wasn't the point of anything that I said, and if you read that into...
Well, yeah, of course, and I know it wasn't. I just suggested it as... I suggested you could do this. I didn't say this was part of your video, did I? No, I said exactly the opposite when I made that suggestion, didn't I? I said, well, here's a suggestion if you want to do a video on the subject. That's what I said, shithead.
My video, I apologize for your misunderstanding.
No, I didn't misunderstand anything. You just cut the clip out where I said right before that, okay, if you're taking suggestions and ever want to talk about the subject, well, here's a suggestion. Why don't you answer this question for me? So you just manipulated the content, distorted and perverted it for your purposes. So that makes you a propagandist to boot. So you're a liar, a propagandist, and a colossal asshole. Bravo.
But in the meantime...
Are you Mexican? Just curious.
How is everything that I do not just some kind of silly addiction? Well, if you want to call everything that I do some kind of silly addiction, then I value silly addictions.
Okay, well, there we go. Fine, whatever. So that's your counter. I just was saying, do you have anything you could show me that wasn't a silly addiction? You're saying, I don't guess I can't. So, but I like silly addictions. So we're back to, if life is horrible, give me more. We're back to your glib response to the fact that suffering is imposed by creating life, and you're just basically saying, I don't fucking care. Thank you. Wonderful. Fantastic. Shit.
In fact, I'm going to go smoke a cigarette. That's a great idea. No, I don't, this is rhetoric. There's no substantive claim in here.
No, there wasn't a claim. There was a question. What do you do that isn't addiction? What gratification do you glean that isn't the product of some deprivation or need within you? What food do you eat when you're not hungry?
I mean, you can call it silly addictions. This is like how is your mother not a whore? Well, because she doesn't sell her body on the street for money. There's a definition of...
Well, I'm just saying you didn't do that, though. I asked you a simple question. You're not giving me no simple answer, okay? So, yeah, how's your mother not a whore? Simple question. I say, okay, but she doesn't sleep with anybody. Yeah, she's selective. And it isn't about the money. So, yeah, that's easy to answer. That's a simple question. You won't give me a simple answer, so I guess you don't have an answer.
Addiction. Right? Necessities. Ontological necessities of the human being are excluded from that category by definition.
No. They're all addictions, okay? Food, air, we're all addicted to all that stuff. Technically, we're fundamentally and completely addicted. If we don't get it, we are depraved and suffering.